Welcome to FinTech Insider Interviews. I'm Jason Bates from 11FS, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Stefan Ebner, CEO of BrainTribe. It says here that you're a leading innovative software company. I'm sure there's a lot hiding behind that. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So let's start off with, what's BrainTribe?
BrainTribe is, I call it a deep tech collective. So basically,
Okay.
so you think about the name Brain. I said I want to hire the smartest people and organize them in a tribe and not an organization. So this was the root idea, 2005.
Okay. So how did that start? Because that sounds like a very bizarre business plan. We're going to bring smart people together.
Yeah, it was not, because I was a musician first. So my first career was being a musician.
Okay.
And I studied music, lived in the US, and then basically came back, was broke, and I studied computer science.
Okay.
So then found my first company, sold it, and it was venture backed. So I saw a lot of bullshit in my first company. And then I did a management buyout, and when I did that, I said, okay, I want to bootstrap as long as possible. I don't want to have this management, this kind of bullshit attitude. And yeah, I like tech, and I said I want to really stay a deep tech company. So that's what we still are.
I'm sure there was also a lot hidden in that answer. A musician that then creates a VC-backed company, has a management buyout, has an exit.
I think about this, what even as a musician, I always look for simplicity. And to be honest, the first customer I had in enterprise, when I stumbled in the enterprise business, basically I saw the complexity. So how complicated is it to solve like the simplest business challenges, no? Okay. So I was just shocked seeing the infrastructure and how, all this playbook, what they're playing. And then, and since then, so we built our first platform, what is addressing also the simplification of data. Okay. And then, we did it this 5 year, we went up to 100 customers, and then we decided to start again, because I think this was the best lessons learned, because I think the first platform, it's always good to use it. And then 2013, we said, okay, now we really know. I went out from engineering and let my guys do it, and then we built TribeFire. And this was really always from the idea, how can we simplify infrastructure, data, and make it easier for business people and easier to consume, but also for non-tech individual. No? And so this was basically always this simplicity, this speed level. This is something what is in my DNA probably.
So what's the pitch? Who are your customers and what are the problems you're solving for them?
The pitch smart data is this category we're trying to build, but the pitch at the moment is pretty simple. No? We go to customers and say, hey, you spend like 500 million in data lakes and big data. And to be honest, for most of the customers, it got worse. And so we go inside and say, hey, let us help you to get the value. It's great you invested in big data, so you need the infrastructure piece. But we say, hey, we take you from there. No? And we just help you to simplify it, to make instant use to your business for your new platforms. So the pitch so the further we came, and also that big data was a little bit of a disappointment. No, I think it's still a great technology, but it was never built to serve business people, and it was never built to serve all these startups and open APIs. So basically, I think there's a big building block missing in the whole data stack, and this is what we want to build.
So are you an infrastructure company, a products company, a services company?
We're a platform company. See a platform. So basically what we have is TribeFire is a platform. So we call it the smart data platform. No? And basically we connect to data, but this is simple to do. Many people tried it, but it's also we basically make data expressive. So we always say let data express itself, so we give it a new meaning. Now, so we take basically the business logic from hundreds of systems and put it in a new middle layer, and this is what we call smart data. No? So for us, data is infrastructure side, what is big data, and we are basically this one source of truth. No? So we have customers having 70 ERP system. So how does your customer look like? No? So we basically don't engineer around with the infrastructure. We say, hey, let it be, and we just try to build this new kind of abstracted view on data in the middle, and then make it easy accessible through APIs, but also we have a very strong tool that you can really browse data like in a graph view, that you would understand data without even knowing where the data is. No? So this bridge between business and IT, but also between, for example, startups and accessing your infrastructure. So I think we see a little bit infrastructure as a service, what is big data, and we see data as a service as the next big thing. No? Think about the software as a service and infrastructure as a service. So I think there's something missing. If people say it's a data-centric world, probably data deserves its own his own stack in the cloud too.
So what size of client do you sell to? Who is your
biggest
client?
At the moment. So for example, we have customers like Johnson & Johnson. So basically to stay focused at the moment, and we deliver in private cloud environments to really big customers, mainly in the financial service industry, so insurance, banking. But sure, we have lighthouse customers like Adidas, Johnson & Johnson. We just did that because it was a long way to build the platform. No? Think about it, it's not this pitch doesn't work for deep tech companies. Hey, build an MVP. It took us 3 years to build an MVP. Right. So we basically have this 4-year strategy to serve big customers. Now we're moving to the public cloud. And hopefully during the end of next year, we can also make this available for all startups. No? Because we don't want to stay in enterprise. We see ourselves as a data company, right, and also want to, so this is a 4-year journey we are going through. No?
So that sounds like a very complex sale. It sounds like a long-term thing to get into a company like Johnson & Johnson. What's the big win for them? How do they justify it?
Think about this. It's still, they know something is wrong. No? When you spend like another $500 million in big data infrastructure, nothing get really better. And you see the need from business. Everyone wants data. So basically, normally we choose one business case and we prove them that it's doable. No, so we don't have this, we sell this whole platform. Sure, we need to convince them that it's a new thing, but then they give us a challenge. No? We don't really have a sales team. So for example, you give us a challenge, we build you an MVP, like this minimal viable platform, how we call it, in a couple of weeks. No? And when you see this is working, you're like, hey, it's great. No? Let's put this live. And then you build another application, and after a couple of applications, you think, hey, it's working, and why not rolling it out strategically? No? So we don't go for this long-term sales pitch that we want to convince them. But sure, if you help them to cope with an existing problem. And there's a lot of data-driven issues coming up now with PSD2, GDPR, all these regulation changes. At the end, it's all like data problems. No? And now you can decide you want to really change your mainframe, your system for hundreds of millions, or you try out new ways. No? So I think everyone has the problem. Probably 10% customers are ready to, or have the mindset that they tried. So I would say if you didn't really invest in big data, probably you don't see the need. You still think this is your way out of the mess. So.
No, it's fascinating. We were talking to a big retailer in the US, and I think like you, are very much proposition driven. There's no business case for architecture. So why are we making this change? And in fact, we were having a conversation with a bank yesterday on the fact it used to be there's a tactical solution, there's the big strategic, expensive, long-term platform, but actually those things are connected now.
Yeah, they're connected, definitely. No? And think about, for me, it's like there's a lot of innovation in infrastructure and a lot of in data, but people don't see this. At the end, it's the same thing. No? Uh-huh. Think about, there have been like all these like container, microservices, all the thing, clouds. And then you have like, even people treat this, and we see ourselves the intersection between infrastructure and data. No? There is an intersection, because at the end it will be stored in your infrastructure. No? And to be honest, also with artificial intelligence and IoT, it's the same thing, no? Because it's also data driven. No? So I think people get more awareness that they need to really start something radically new. No? So I think when I see the last 2 years, it's getting much easier to, and the more customers you onboard, no? And I think about, we're still a zero marketing company. No? So basically we just do reference selling. So another customer talks to another customer. And now we're basically in this phase of really scaling this thing out in 2018. No?
So out of all of these clients and different projects you've done, what are the commonalities? Are there some points at which you see people tend to start? What are those initial business cases?
I mean, we have two main, how we qualified opportunities. One is like digital platform driven. This is basically what you're aware. Somebody says, hey, I want to build a new bank. Let's just sketch out the data model. So you don't really have legacy data, but you also want to start super quick on the semantic side. This is the exciting, but not so the money driven. And then it's probably the customer driven change. No? So most of the problems are driven from customer data. Analytics didn't really do the job. No? I mean, if you don't have the data, analytics also doesn't help. So basically most of the things are driven by customers 360 kind of application. No? Also, some call it next generation omni-channel. No? So it's like, how can you get your customer data together, but then take it from there? No? Because think about it, it's a long journey. No? I mean, this is what you said. No? You need to learn to just have quick wins, but think big. And there's a challenge for everyone, for startups, but especially for enterprises. No?
And is that how TribeFire, your platform, works? Is it something where you can start small with a particular proposition and then build it into that big strategy.
Exactly. Think about all the semantics, all these data models we are building. We build it once, and you can start reusing them. No? So the more we build, the quicker we get. Mm-hmm. And so we have hundreds or thousands of models. So when we would start with you, hey, do you want to use this customer model? Mm-hmm. So this is the interesting thing. The platform is not a really IP. It's more the assets we built. No? So when you see the data assets, how we call them, running on the platform becomes the bigger IP for us and for the customer. No? And like I said, this 4-week pitch, and what we say, hey, if you want to test it out, and we give you like a real result end to end, with from real data, not everyone, but some real data with a new kind of data experience and some simple application. And this is still impressive for when you go to big enterprises that they get real results after a couple of weeks. No?
Definitely. We find exactly the same thing, that fast results in a sprint, that building something tactical that can become strategic. It doesn't require that 10, 20, 50 million pound investment and hundreds of people in order to make it work.
Yeah, definitely. And the great thing, we are like deep tech company, so our buyers totally shifted. So it's more the chief data officer, the business people, and think about, it's hard to convince sometimes enterprise architects, because think about, there's so many opinions to do stuff. So so we always try to find a sponsor first with a clear business opportunity, then we test it out. And then we convince the IT guy this is a real thing. Now, because at the end you need a big scale platform. Still, you need to convince the people this fits in your like enterprise architecture. No? So but it's easier way to if you prove it first to business and you have a sponsor, and then it's easier to convince IT people. Because if you start with IT, it will always be a tool discussion.
Definitely, because I think people put technology at the forefront too often and then try and retrofit a business case or how it will benefit customers rather than starting from that perspective and building back.
And everyone talks about now we're vertically driven, we sell to business, but still it's not right. Now when you think about 99% of enterprise software companies still are selling to the CEO, no? But so basically just focusing, and it's interesting even from the organization. Also, we have this strong R&D team, but we have a very strong consulting team. Also, at the end, so we don't really have sales. So basically, we have verticalized consulting teams that understand and identify the problems. No? So the first thing, we don't even need to sell you the platform. We say, hey, you have a GDPR problem. Can I show you how we would solve it? No? Sure. And then people will say, hey, what's behind it? And it's Stripefire, and then it's easier sales than just like, because this technology sales gets more complicated.
But that, to me, seems the key problem with data, the lack of talented people who can actually work out what a hypothesis would be and what data they would need in order to test that. It seems everyone's focusing on bringing data together without thinking about how we would use it or what the opportunities are.
Definitely. Think about in data science, 90% of these people are basically just meshing data, so they don't even have time of doing data science because they're doing more the plumbing work. So I think this data-centric culture, how we call it. Now, what we advise our customers, if you really mean it, it's 50% technology, but it's 50% that you change your culture from infrastructure to a data-centric culture, what is huge. No? Okay. Because think about a chief data officer, normally he has the role of just like, you give him some new initiative, but think about, he has the same power and he has his own team and his own architecture, his own platform. It's a pretty new concept. No? So
what is a data-centric culture? How would I recognize one?
Data-centric culture means that people really can focus, think about, they don't need to worry about where data is coming from, but basically they get the data, like raw data in the format they need. So I give you all the customer data, so you don't know where it's coming from, and you think about, you just take the insights, you build new application on top of it. No? That's what I mean. But to have this kind of data, you also need to set up a data governance and how we call it a data supply chain. Now, what is basically cleaning up data and just like doing it in a very sprint-based iterative role. Because there's also something a customer says, I need to clean up my data first, and 5 years later, they're still not done. No? Sure. So this is also not a good strategy, cleaning up data first. So we always say, hey, do it iteratively. When you build something, you see the quality, fix it. So everything becomes a movement. Now in data, I think a data culture means you need to just think in smaller sprints. Infrastructure is still hard to move around. No, that's probably why it's called infrastructure because it's not really transportable. No? But with data, you can work more on this kind of semantic understanding the data, and this is a fascinating thing. And that's what I mean. It's a complicated thing to change a culture from a customer. It's hard enough to do it for yourself. So we have like, you need to be ready. That's what I mean. Now, if somebody is really not ready for having this data-centric culture, it will be a hard sell for us. No? So, but when we see the awareness already, and awareness comes always first, no? then people are easier, they're more coachable, I would say.
So it sounds like a very different way of delivering the services. Tell us about your team. Who works for you?
Yeah, I mean, basically, like I said, we're a little bit structured like Alphabet. We have basically we run in different domains. So we have this R&D domain. So we have nearly 80 people would work in our deep tech R&D. Okay. And so around them we build different vertical teams. So basically we're a very strong consultant, but everyone has a tech background.
Okay.
So this is basically, and we work with partners. So basically now we work with Capco for financial services global. Okay. So we just signed the agreement. Now we're looking for a life science partner or for insurance. And it's really helpful if you start with one, because otherwise you always get lost in the opportunity. So basically I think we know our strengths, but we also know what we don't want to do. So we leave the project management, the delivery to these guys, and we focus more on the consulting architectural piece. And we can focus on our product and not, because you know how these big customers at the end still are. They're like 5 years of payment transformation, and you get lost in the opportunity as a startup. And this is what we did before with the previous platform. So this time we had a lot of lessons learned, and basically we just try to give all the service revenue to partners. So this is just a philosophy, what is in our DNA now. No?
So do you see more of that ecosystem style play with specialist vendors and specialist providers working together?
Definitely, that's what I said. It's nobody has. I mean, this is what the big enterprise vendors still try to convince, that we have everything, but nobody has a full stack. And I would say we can do so much stuff with TribeFire, but still we have a sweet spot. And we just focus on the sweet spot and think about, we even work with all the integration vendors, and sure, there could be competitors. Now, analytics companies, sure, we could do analytics, but we just team up with these guys, and so you become much stronger. And the same with system integrators. Now, they're also looking for some edge new technologies to prove their business models. No?
So you've created one company, you've created a similar company again. If you were going to do it a third time, how would you do it differently?
No, I will not do the third time, because this time we're going to make. This is not. I think this is we had. This is the shot now. We feel it now, and this is. But I think if we can't make it this time, then I'll probably do something.
You wouldn't
different.
Try the third.
No, but it's just like, think about, in our culture we have been bootstrapped for so long. We bootstrapped until nearly 80 people. And so even when you're a revenue-driven company, and this is, I think it's also a great culture that you live from the revenues of a customer. And now we are basically going very late stage to a funding round. No?
So one of my favorite quotes is, "Startups don't starve, they drown." It seems like there's so much opportunity and so many things you could possibly do. Yeah. How do you focus on what it is you want to achieve?
Yeah, I think it was really a struggle. Think about, we're Vienna based, now we're in the US and we're London, and we're all over the place. So it was this separation of concerns, how we call it, that we build up teams that can run independently. So we don't have this central management. So if you ask where's our headquarters, I would say Vienna R&D, London financial services. So basically we're very purpose driven, and we have like how we manage the company, big OKRs and very weekly sprints. So the whole company from selling runs on Kanban, on Scrum. And so basically everything we run like a big Scrum board, but just weekly sprints. No? So you get the feeling you get something done, but the big things will take months, years sometimes. No? And even if you have younger employees, to show them this difference between the big things. And this is what I've seen with a lot of startups. No? If you just work on these big objectives, you always feel you get nothing done. No? So and this is why it was really hard to reinvent ourselves with this, what operation model we want to use. No? And just being in the US, and for me it was really good just being around, and I learned a lot from London, from New York, Silicon Valley, but also coming from Vienna, and just taking the best out of it. And that's what we also try to do on culture, on operation. No? So this is, it's not a disadvantage if you're not.
No, and we were in TransferWise a couple of weeks ago where we were talking to their teams,
guys, yeah.
And again, very small autonomous teams. But the point they brought up was that actually the problem then becomes, how do you align all of those teams along common objectives, given that they've all got OKRs and are all smaller things,
it's
smaller
hard,
pieces.
It's really hard. I think it's just like you give up perfectionism a little bit. And just really tell people what are the real key priorities. No? Think about still the objectives, but they're like couple of things that really matters. No? So we always try and think about, we have every Friday we have a all hands like tribe session, we distribute it. So we do a lot of stuff, we do a lot of investment in communication, and this is really paying off. No? Because no tool can really help you on that, just like being present and nurturing the real communication. That's a downside of techies anyway. They think that even with customer relation, you can do remote work, but you cannot build up a remote relation. So I think this is where I'm a little bit older, so I still come from, I think that also helps you a little bit when you come from a more analog world and you're not so used to digital only. No? So.
I'm fascinated by how many startups or scale-ups have auditoria, have places where actually you can do all hands meetings. It seems we have that polarization of a intensely digital world of Slack and email and messaging, while at the same time are now building places and offices where companies can get together as a whole.
Definitely, that's what we try to nurture. And also think about it, even when you're a platform company, where does your company end and your partner customer starts? So it's the blurring boundaries, I would say. No? So this is interesting when you give up this, like, hey, everything is open, transparent. It's really an interesting model when you think about it, no? Because you have such a powerful, we're like 100 people, but when you think all these partners, so you can say we're like 10,000 people when you just connect all the dots and you forget these boundaries of a company. No?
Speaking of blurring boundaries, I hear you have a club in your office.
Yeah, people. I mean, it's more than a club. Like I said, it's a location, and what we have like 100 events and business events, hackathons, startup education. All hands, and sure, we have Friday, Saturday, we have this club, and everything remembers the club. No, so basically, it's a huge location. It's in the ground floor, and Friday, Saturday, we just have. So we don't do it, but we have somebody else hosting clubbings, and it's just nice also for hiring. No, so think about a lot of young people are there, and they said we hired a lot of great people out of that. It's an edgy differentiation, but it's a totally separate company now, and it's my company, but we didn't really like it, the idea that a CEO focuses in a club. So basically it runs totally without us. But it's a great differentiation, and I like this diversity, just having different people. Because for me, diversity is not just like in your company, it means also that you have other verticals, and think about just having musicians and concerts, you just have different people, and it's also very powerful for your employees, no? Because like techies they come with 22, make a lot of money. And some things.
Yeah, I think people do forget that diversity is not only about skin, gender, race, but actually about different ways of seeing.
Definitely. No? Think about even now we hired people from Accenture, from IBM, even that's a diversity move.
Wow, even people from Accenture.
But for us it was a diversity move. Think about it from our R&D culture. So we had to open up our culture and really prepare the company, no? Because these people have so much strengths, but if you don't, if it's your weakness, you never you see like strengths like as your enemy.
Yeah.
So this is something. It's just interesting when you see how can you know what people are joining, and this is what is super important. No? That
I joke because originally I worked for Accenture way back in the day. So how do you maintain productivity within the team and lead them? I'm interested in, for a modern organization, especially where you've created your operating model, like how do you lead and manage and motivate as a CEO?
To be honest, I'm really the believer. I would say I have some strengths and also a lot of weaknesses, but I'm the role model. No? So my idea is I'm just like, nobody works when I'm not there, no? And I have no vacation. When any employee like worldwide has no holidays, I'm not on holiday, no? So basically, when an Austrian has a holiday and somebody in the UK needs to work, I'm in the office, no? So just this is super important for young people, no? Because otherwise you preach something, and this is this transparency, no? And this honesty, what is brutal, no? I mean, think about transparency. People ask for freedom, transparency, but it's brutal, no? It also shows like, if you're bad performing, everyone sees it. No? Yeah. So employee always forget it's not a one-side way.
Sure.
And so I think this is what people at the end they know. No, that I'm basically just try to lead by example, and people always I tell them the truth. No? Whatever it is, no? Even on firing, whatever it is, things need to be done. And if you talk to people, it's not such a bad thing. No? Some things don't work. No?
Do you think that there's a limit to that? Famously, Buffer shared all of their salary bands and what everyone was
salaries
working on.
We don't share. The only thing we don't share is salaries, to be honest. The only thing, the rest we share. And it really paid off, and sure, a lot of we also went through our transformation. No? So a lot of people left, and you just need to face the truth. When you move next stage of a startup, we will lose people. No? And this is. But I always tell people, hey, the end is just a company, no? Because I just try to avoid it becomes more like this cult. So I always tell people, hey, it's just a job, no, but it's really sometimes, because I had some bad examples, no, when people leave and people like, hey, it's like. A tribe, people just push you out of the tribe, and so we also talk about firing, and we don't make such a big deal. We make a party when somebody leaves, no? So
that's interesting that you would essentially use a message or talk to people about it just being a company, because I agree, you can join companies where bizarrely, when I left Accenture, it was such a identity shift. I know people who left a big consulting who still for weeks were talking about we, when rather than I, because they felt such ownership with that identity.
Sure. With a startup, it's even more. Now it's like you see, and I think we have a great culture, and so for people it's hard sometimes to leave, no? But even some people leave and come back, no? So even we had a lot of people that I forced a little bit, hey, learn something with a different company, and sure. So the people can always come back, no? So I think you just need to also, like, there's too much of this startup has too much of, like, it's still at the end it's a company, no? Sure. I mean, I think in Vienna I had this speech yesterday. It's about the more people that around the startup system than startups in Vienna, no? You have like more consultings in startups than startups, and so it also becomes a little bit, at the end it's just founding a company. It always happened, and it's not such a big thing. No?
So you're fighting the hype by just reminding people of
I'm just ignoring the hype a little bit. No, but it's a good thing to be in Vienna. Think about when we got started, we focused really on the product. There were no startups, no networking, nothing. Sure. We're coding day and night. No?
Yeah.
And this is what I'm missing sometimes. No? People need 3 months MVP, what is hard for new deep tech companies. And also, like, hey, if you're out of the office 90%, when do you do your work? So this is what I really try also to find a good balance for my people. No?
Yeah.
And it's a hard ride. I mean, to be honest, it's a startup. You climb this mountain and it's getting worse, but you get used to it. So you're more like excited. Hey, what's the next disaster coming up?
I totally agree. I think that there's this Hollywood TV view of what a startup life is like, and really it's just brutal hard work.
It's brutal hard, but it's a lot of fun if you're made for it. No? That's what I said. And I'm teaching at the university like this in Vienna, and I always tell people in the room, hey, 90%, I'm here to convince 90% of your people you should never find a company. No? Because really a lot of people go more, they're buying into this marketing story. No?
Sure.
And they ask you questions like, hey, what happens when I run out of money? And you say, yeah, you're dead. I think it's worth it. No? I mean, I wouldn't change it. Being a musician, I didn't work a single day for a company. No? So even it took me a long time even understand employees, no, to get the empathy level that sure. I can really understand them. No? It's also important for a founder who never worked for a company that he understands the fears and the stuff, because as a startup founder you get used to the fear and it becomes a normal life. No? So, and you get too hard maybe sometimes. No?
So talking about advice and career advice, what's the best you've ever given or been given?
I think the best was really because when we started raising money, one of my board guys told me, he said, look, for investor, hire the investor like an employee, no? For culture fit, for skills. Mm-hmm. And we have this super complicated hiring process. Mm-hmm. And so we did the same thing, and we even extended to customer, no? Because I really think about an employee is still away, but an investor, if he comes in, this is a 10-year relationship, no? So I really even think about, we have a lot of traction, we have a lot of VCs, and I really look about more the partner than the brand, and I really have the same standards there. No? Do I get along with the guy, no? Who will be in your board meeting? And so this was the best advice, and now we have it also in sales. We talk about customers, hey, are they a culture fit? So it's really interesting, because what I saw is if there's no culture fit between a customer or a partner, the project will be a disaster. No? Yeah. And I don't need this hit and run money. This is something, so we definitely, choosing customers sounds super arrogant, but it's more like finding out if even for them, if it's a fit and we can really help them. And it's not just the technology, it's also if we have the culture to work with their culture.
I so agree. We found that very much with 11FS, that there are some people that fit and some companies that fit and great things happen. And there are others that even through the RFP process or talking to them, you think, this is just not going to go well. And it's being able to follow that intuition, I guess.
So what do you do after that? You go for the RFP?
No. In fact, we've been asked to price or deliver or to propose things where we've said, if you want that, then it's just probably not us, because ultimately it isn't.
No, I think this takes really some. I think this is great when you're a little bit over 40 now. But I really think this is the biggest problem. We came into choosing the wrong customers. To be honest, when I look back all the 15 years of having companies, it always started with customers you knew on the signature this will never work. No, but it's exhausting, no? Because it drags you away from the product, and great customers help you to make your product better. That's really, no? And so.
So for customers who can get into this process in order to find out whether they are a fit, how do they find out about you?
Like I said, at the moment it's more like we try to stay focused. End of March is our business, so we're preparing this big relaunch and our big growth funding round. Now, so at the moment it's still more partner bring us a lot of opportunities. We work also close with some analysts, and we get about 20 customer inbounds per week from huge enterprises. So we just try to stay focused, no? So, but this is when you do you deliver, and I always say the guys deliver on time, and we will be very unique in the enterprise space, no? Think about it, it's so normal of not delivering that even people don't care anymore, no? So they say, hey, this guy's delivered on time, what's wrong with these guys, no? But so I think this is focusing. Customers will refer to others because they're proud if they have something what is working.
So what about listeners and viewers? How would they find you?
They can come to Vienna.
You must have a website or a Twitter or a address.
BrainTribe.com. We're going to launch our beta cloud very soon. So we have this public cloud on Google that people can start using the tool from January and just playing around a little bit, so for a full year. And really in Vienna we have every second week we have a TribeFire boot camp, and people can join for free if they want to learn. And it's also a big success now. So we have a full week of training where people don't pay, they just come to Vienna. And we have like 20, 30 people joining every second week, just learning and they learn. So this is also, we try to be super open. And
fantastic. Well, next time in Vienna, I'm sure I'll drop by and see you. Stefan, thanks so much for taking some time and talking to us. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.